My name's Lisa Flaherty, and I'm interviewing
Michelle Riley.
for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. The date is the 15th of July, and the interview is taking place at the Georgia Historical Society in Savannah. So, let's see. So tell us a little bit about yourself, in broad terms. What year were you born?
I was born in 1960. I'm 56 years old. So I was 12 years old when Roe versus Wade was passed.
And where were you born?
In Alabama, but I was raised in Texas. I've lived in Texas since I was 6 months old.
And how long have you been in Savannah?
I've been in Savannah almost 15 years.
And what brought you to Savannah?
Work. I grew up in Texas. As soon as I graduated from high school, I moved to Los Angeles, where I went to college, and that's where I first became active in the abortion rights movement. Was in Los Angeles. Lived there for 12 years. Moved to Atlanta. Worked for Jimmy Carter for the 90s, and then worked for a different humanitarian organization for the 2000s. And just started working in Savannah about 4 or 5 years ago. So now I actually work in the city in which I live.
So it sounds like going to university is really what brought your attention to these issues.
I don't think it was that. I think it may have been living in Los Angeles. I went to a very right-wing university that was not really my cup of tea, except that it was based in Malibu. But I really loved LA, and in the late 70s and early 80s, when Reagan became president, it really looked like Roe v. Wade had been overturned by the Supreme Court. And so, leaders like Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, people who are probably about 20 years older than I am, 15 or 20 years old, they became very active, and many young women in their early 20s, like I was at that time, or late teens, became extremely active to try to prevent Roe v. Wade from being overturned.
Can you think of any particular event that maybe really solidified your attention on this issue?
Well, it was probably that my closest friend in Texas got pregnant, and I actually took her to Planned Parenthood to have an abortion, so I sat with her. My father was also an OB-GYN, and when I was 15 years old, he asked me if I should be on the pill, which I found very, very insulting at the time. And but he assured me that he had seen many pregnant, unwed 15-year-olds, and he was trying to protect me. And so I was really lucky that I had a parent that was, really looking after my health and my future. So I think that made me just think about those that did not have that kind of support, So instead, there's my best friend without a guy who's going to stand up for her or her parents. So I stood up for her. And I think that mattered to me. Then, of course, again, because I would visit home in Texas quite a lot when I first moved to California. And then I'd go back to California, and there would be Barbara Streisand in the park, or, with Jane Fonda or whatever. So it was quite a movement then. This would have probably been around 79 to 81, right around there.
Tell me a little bit more about your parents. Were they involved politically, or?
No, I'm from a Republican family, and I was actually a card-carrying Republican back in those days, and I even voted for Reagan, because I never actually thought he meant it when he said that he would try to overturn Roe v. Wade. And he probably did not, although a lot of people thought that Sandra Day O'Connor would be that swing vote, and luckily she was not. I went to a very, Republican school with Republican friends and Republican family. When I moved to Georgia, I was still a registered Republican, But Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House, and when people ask me why I stopped being a Republican, I say one person, Newt Gingrich, you are probably too young to remember this, but back in the maybe mid-90s, he actually was advocating for America building orphanages all over America to make abortion illegal and to house these little babies in orphanages. And I just found that so despicable that it threw me into the arms of the Democrats.
Let me see. So the next question, I think your sign answers it. Have you been involved in political activities in the past? And just describe them.
Yes, I am almost a one-issue voter and have been for many, many years about abortion rights. And I don't have a good memory of it, but I do remember a few times when I was in college, I was actually part of the folks that you would go to an abortion clinic and hold the protesters back so the ladies could walk in. And it seems like the abortion clinic was in the San Fernando Valley, so that was probably the first time I became active. But you know, I've certainly always voted. I've always given money to NARAL and to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is actually in my will. So I'm a legacy donor to Planned Parenthood. But it just appalls me to see how hard women have fought for their rights, and how in the late 90s, early 2000s, it almost seemed to me that we were giving up ground we had made, and we weren't even recognizing that that was happening. And you know, my mother is almost 89 years old. She was born in 1928, so she was born only 8 years after women were allowed to vote, which is just mind-blowing to me that my mother could still be alive, and that's how close we are to the time that we were allowed to vote. So what's really on my mind, I think, when you ask that question, is I remember in 1999, I moved from Atlanta back to Texas. And I had not lived in Texas for exactly 20 years. I had moved to LA in '79. And all of a sudden, in Texas, I started hearing about this men's group called Promise Keepers. And I looked into what this Promise Keepers was on the internet, and I just couldn't believe what I was reading. It was, you know, saying that women should be obedient to their husbands. It was just such a throwback to the 1940s or 50s. I just could not believe it. And I emailed probably 30 of my female friends from all the way from LA to Georgia to Florida to Texas, saying, have you guys heard about this? We all need to keep our eyes on this. We need to realize that, you know, if we allow oppression to occur again, it will occur again. And we need to keep our eyes on it. And I just kind of felt like that wasn't really happening. That's why I was so happy to do the million-person march in 2004, which was extremely well organized by Planned Parenthood and I believe NOW. And that was the first time in my whole life that, as far as I could see, everywhere I turned, the people around me thought like I did. And it was such a fabulous feeling. It's indescribable to describe that, to be just surrounded with people that think like you do. And it was a wonderful feeling. The one that we did this past January seemed much more angry than the one in 2004. And I think that's because so many women in America had not been paying attention and did not realize what was happening until the election occurred. And suddenly they're oh so shocked, and they're angry. where if they'd been paying attention, he wouldn't have been elected.
When you say angry, what can you think of any specific events or anything that someone said to you that did you want to describe?
Well, I mean, you know, I thought they were funny and I liked them, but a lot of the posters and things, you know, like Pussy Grabs Back, those were posters in the march. You know, stay out of my bush. So it was, so much of the march in January was reactive, where I felt like the march in 2004 was proactive.
What did some of the signs look like in 2004?
It was highly planned, so most of them were given to us. We had these, then the primary was the pink Planned Parenthood. They gave us plastic wands that we could beat together that made noise, and we all had t-shirts that were bright pink. And I believe the name of the actual march was the March for Women's Lives, I believe was the name of the march. And so it was very focused on abortion rights, where of course the march this past January had many diverse commentary and diverse thoughts that people were marching for, which I did think was great. I liked that. But again, it did seem reactive. It seemed to me kind of too bad that people hadn't seen this coming, because I think if we had paid a little bit of attention, we all could have seen it coming.
Can you compare the speakers from, say, 2004 to the speakers that you saw and heard at the Women's March?
I can try. In 2004, I was very lucky that I just happened to be in Washington for work that week, and I believe the march was also on a Saturday. I got done with my work. My last meeting was Thursday night. So on Friday morning, I just walked around somewhere near the mall. I had found that there was a storefront, a temporary storefront, where they were handing out our t-shirts and our wands and signs and things. And I walked in there and hardly anybody was in there. And the ladies said, "Well, you're early." And I said, "Well, I'm just here for work." And they said, "Well, you know, we need to find about 200 women who will step off with Hillary Clinton and Gloria Steinem and Kate Michelman and Jane Fonda and some others to just start the march. Would you be willing to be part of that 200? And I said, yes, obviously I would. And so I got to be, you know, just kind of the cool beginning of it. Again, it was just so incredibly well planned. It was permitted for 1 million people, so, you know, just all the facilities were there. We were allowed to march on the very large streets, so Pennsylvania Avenue and Constitution, that are, you know, many lanes across, and we filled up the whole streets. It was just fabulous. So I think a lot of what we heard was the text that we think of hearing from the women that you know came before, that really broke all these barriers. Because it was those women that we were listening to. Sybil Shepherd was there. You know, it was just the ones you think of that are now about 70 years old, I think. So that was fabulous. This time, because I think the organizers of the January event did a fabulous job when you think that they only had, I believe, 86 days to prepare, where the one in 2004, they prepared for over a year. So, you know, for 3 months, these folks this year did a great job. But of course, they didn't have the permits for the amount of people they had. They didn't have the facilities. It seemed that because the march itself was multi-topical, as opposed to just being for abortion rights, you had so many different viewpoints and so many speakers speaking about different things, and so you didn't really have a thread. But I thought it was fascinating. Again, the speakers that I heard, they just seemed angry. Just the level of anger was not as satisfying to me. But on the other hand, I really liked the diversity. There was a lot of diversity at the 2017 March.
Now, how did you find out about the march?
I don't know. I imagine it was Facebook.
When did you start making plans to go?
I had my reservations by November, by the end of November.
And were you traveling with anyone?
No, I actually, this wonderful young woman here in Savannah named Coco Pappy kind of led the charge for Savannah, and she organized buses so that everybody could go together. However, I just kind of knew my stamina levels and things like that, and so I actually wanted to stay in a hotel. So I was kind of proud of myself that I really thought it through very carefully, and I bought clothes at Walmart that I could throw away, that I could just leave in the hotel room. So I packed my clear backpack just with the clothes that I would wear on the actual march. I took the Amtrak up for 11 hours, the longest I've ever been on a train, and it was so fun because as that Amtrak would stop at all these different cities between Savannah and Washington, D.C., more and more women would be getting on, and they'd be wearing their pissy hats, and they'd have their homemade signs, and it was really fabulous. And by the time we got anywhere within several hundred miles of Washington, that train was just packed with marchers. It was fabulous. So that night I stayed in Alexandria, and a lot of people at the hotel were also marchers. And then the next morning, I just left my clothes in the hotel room, so now I had exactly what I needed for my backpack and what I was wearing. And because of that, by the time I got to the actual mall, it was already kind of in a troublesome situation where they did not have the permits for the really big streets, and I actually never found the Savannah folks. But that was okay, because I had marched before and I had worked in Washington a lot, so I knew Washington. So that was fine with me, and I had a lot of fun with complete strangers all day. And then that night, I caught up with the buses, so I already had myself a bus reservation. So I got to ride back with all the Savannians that had marched that day.
Well, did you have any conversations on the train up with these people that were getting on?
Yes, and again, it was fun. There were a lot of people were right at my age, where we were born in the 60s, and a lot of people had their daughters with them, which I thought was cool. Several people seemed to have their granddaughters with them, which was cool also. It was just fun, It's that feeling that. When we all stand together, you can make a difference, but it takes every single person standing up and doing it. You can't talk about it, you have to actually do it. And I think it was that feeling of power of the people and togetherness and community. And I think it worked, which to me is very important. It doesn't mean that Roe v. Wade is not going to be overturned, because I think it will, probably in the next year. But at least we finally came together and let our voices be heard. And of course, again, it was more than just abortion rights. It's voting rights, for heaven's sake. To think that we're even having to think about that in the 21st century, that the equivalent of poll taxes are occurring, and to try to keep minorities from voting. It's just mind-blowing to me. Yeah. But hopefully the anger continues to turn into action, and the anger doesn't rip us apart as a country, but instead catalyzes those of us who believe in real democracy to roll back these bad things that are happening, and to advance and promote democratic values as we understand them to be.
So when you arrived, can you just describe the scene?
Yes, it was kind of funny because I'm not an early riser, so I think a lot of the other marchers had already left the hotel in Alexandria. So I'm marching all by myself. I'm just walking in Alexandria, Virginia, to where I thought the hotel person told me the bus was. And I was trying to save my phone battery, so I was trying not to use my maps and things. And I'm just walking along the street, and I have my very obvious, famous, keep abortion legal sign that people recognize just at a glance. And so cars were honking at me. Nobody yelled at me badly, so that's good. Everybody seemed to agree. But I ended up walking completely the wrong way. So now I've had to turn around. A housekeeper at a motel said, no, you've gone the wrong way. Go this way. So now I'm walking up all these hills, and I'm already kind of getting tired and hot because it was very hilly, and I've got my big backpack on. And was really just feeling like I was about to be lost when a DC bus drives up to me, and the bus driver goes, just get on. So I get on this bus, and the bus driver, I said, how much do I owe you? He said, you don't owe me anything. I'm just going to take you to the MARTA station where you need to go. So I'm standing there on this full bus of people, many of whom have signs, but a lot of people, I think, were just going to work or something on that Saturday morning also. So that was kind of nice of the bus guy. And so he takes me to the MARTA, and then the MARTA, made the paper. It made the Washington Post, how crowded the MARTA was. But it was just a party. I mean, basically everybody on the MARTAs. It took 2 hours to go 11 stops. So it was very crowded, but it was fun. Everybody was getting wrapped up and ready to go. I also enjoyed, during the march, I felt a little bit like a mentor because I was surprised by how many ladies, but because the march itself got a little overwhelmed by more people than expected, they, at 2 in the afternoon and things like that, they were saying, well, we haven't marched yet, because we can't seem to get to the actual, planned march area. And I said, oh, no. When you have this many hundreds of thousands of people, just find people who are walking, walk with them, and you're marching. You're doing it. And I thought that was kind of cute how many ladies didn't kind of realize that if you just, go with the flow, you don't have to be on the main street. You can be on any street as long as you're with others. You are marching. And so I found myself on a side street. I think I was on C Street, marching along, and all of a sudden I see these 2 women standing on these collapsed plastic crates. So that wasn't a great idea because it wasn't stable, but they were probably 5 feet up in the air. And of course I realized exactly who was standing there. It was Cecile Richards with Ashley Judd. And we're all moving along, and all of a sudden the younger folks are all like, oh look, there's Ashley Judd. Well, who I cared about was Cecile Richards. So I started going, everybody, that's Cecile Richards from Planned Parenthood. And so everybody started cheering, and they got on megaphones, and they talked to us on the crowd, kind of making sure they weren't falling off of their plastic heap. And that was great because, we were just on a side street. We weren't even in the real, planned march area, but they came to the marchers. So I find Cecile Richards obviously to just be, a true hero. And being a Texan, her mother is Ann Richards, who had been the governor of Texas. Also.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't you tell a little bit more about Cecile Richards and how you came to know about her?
Yeah, I think in the 80s I was more focused on the National Abortion Rights Action League, NARAL, who was led by Kate Michelman back then. And I'm not sure who led Planned Parenthood back then, but Kate Michelman was an incredibly strong figure for women's rights overall, and especially abortion rights. When she retired, I believe was at the same time that Cecile Richards probably began her presidency for being president of Planned Parenthood. And she just ended up being great. She has all of her mother's personality without the cutting edge. So she handles the political part a little more diplomatically. But she's just fabulous. And of course, not only is she a strong leader, but as we all know, last fall she sat through that grueling, incredibly insulting Senate hearing, or maybe it was a House hearing, for many hours, and came through with flying colors as they tried to accuse her of selling baby parts. It was one of the most despicable things I've ever seen happen in Washington, and she just handled it so beautifully. She never broke a sweat, she never got angry, she just handled it.
Well, did you get to speak to her at all?
No, I didn't try to.
Yeah.
She did kind of grin at me because she could tell that I was the one telling everybody who she was. So, but that's okay. I never really feel a need to meet folks. I just am proud to do my little part to support her.
So how did the day progress from there?
Well, it was just a great day. I thought I just marched around lots of different places, and I would get tired of being with one group. So again, I'm lucky because I know Washington, so I know the streets. I knew how to get off streets and go find a restroom. I knew where to go several blocks away, so you wouldn't have to wait in line for 2 hours, things like that. And I just marched around different places all day long until I got tired of it. And then when I realized that I probably had a good ways to go to find our bus, and since I had not ridden up with the group, I was not exactly sure where the bus was parked. So I probably started marching, probably got off the the MARTA train, actually at the march site around 11 in the morning, and my guess is I marched around till about 4. And then, by then in January, you're getting close to dark, and I didn't get to the bus until it was already nighttime. And
your expectations before the march and once you arrived at the march. Talk about that a little.
My expectations were high because I had done the 2004 march, and the 2004 march had been so really just perfectly planned to the last detail. So I don't think I was disappointed in the 2017 march, but it was, it was obviously quite different. There was, a bit of chaos to it. But that's okay. I mean, you go with the flow. And for me, even though I kind of wish that I caught up with the Savannah group, on the other hand, I really quite liked not catching up with them, because when you're alone, you can zigzag through the crowd, you can leave whenever you want, you get to meet people from all over America, and just, join in with them for a while and then go do your own thing. So I quite enjoyed that, actually.
Were you, many people that we interviewed were surprised at the numbers. Did the numbers surprise you?
No, not. In fact, if anything, I felt like people were inflating the numbers a little bit because I had been at 2004, and 2004 really was 1 million people. So this to me seemed significantly smaller than 2004. It was just because they didn't have the permitting for the very wide boulevard streets. It appeared to be so packed, but really, had they been able to march in the same way, I think it would have been noticeably a lot less people than in 2004. My guess is that this one probably had maybe 600,000, 500,000.
And you have another sign with you.
I do. I was one
Tell
of the
us about
lucky
that.
people that, Scott Stanton, who is known as Panhandle Slim here in Savannah, he was so kind, and before the march, a photographer named Molly Hayden and Panhandle Slim were so kind. He actually created art and gave it away to all of us. And Molly took professional headshots of us. And I actually used to be the public relations director of our major art museum here in Savannah. And while I was there, we hung Panhandle Slim as an exhibition. And so I can really very much appreciate the fact that I now own a Panhandle Slim that he gave me. And I just think he's so cool the way that he finds real quotes from people that just seem to hit home so perfectly. For me, this is just perfect for me because it's just so Liz Taylor, and it's just the way I believe, you know, that you don't whine about it, you don't really get angry, you take action, you know, pull yourself together and get on with it. And so I was very, very happy to have the sign that I had.
And carry that in.
Yes, and see, he made it where it can fold, and so I folded it up, and then the second I got home, I straightened it back out. So I'm hoping it'll last for a long time. But
Fantastic.
yeah. And then I actually hid this for a while in Washington and just walked with this one because I got a hotel guy at a hotel that I used to stay at a lot when I used to work in Washington a lot. I got one of the hotel guys to put it in a luggage space for me for a while, for a couple of hours actually.
Now, people that found out that you had marched or were going to march, what were their reactions?
Oh, that was pretty interesting. I actually, I'm a contractor for a government agency, and so I've only worked there in January. I'd only worked there about 15 months, I think, and my female boss knew what I was doing, but I didn't really mention it to anybody else in my office because it just didn't seem appropriate office discussion. And when I got back to the office that Monday, as I walked in the office, pretty much every single woman in that office came out of her office saying, "Oh my gosh, you were in Washington. You were in Washington." So they had found out, you know, probably through Facebook or something, that I was there, and they just all wanted to hear about it, and it was great. They all wished that they could have gone, so that was pretty cool. In my hometown in Texas, which is of course, you know, very Republican, they're all Trump lovers. I think they're just used to me being rogue. I was one of the only people from my very small hometown to ever leave Texas, and I think I was one of only 2 people that left Texas to go to college. So.
How big was the town? Do you remember?
It's a very small town. When I left in 1979, it had 7,000 people, but it was built as a bedroom community for Johnson Space Center. So many of my friends' dads were rocket scientists. It was a very cool way to grow up. We were, you know, growing up during the Apollo years, and it was fabulous.
Yeah. So they had fathers with these advanced educations, but you say many of them didn't go to college?
No, many of them went to college, but
Oh.
not outside of Texas.
Okay.
Yes, so I've always been kind of a black sheep that way. That the second I graduated from high school, I was in California.
Okay, so let's talk about the trip back on the bus. So you knew many of the people on the bus.
Yes, I did, and then other people I just knew slightly, you know, just from PR stuff around Savannah. So I really enjoyed it. I got to ride next to Samita and Autumn Van Gunten were sitting across from me, and so we got to talk a lot. That was fun. It was fun. You know, they're both younger than me, and it's really fun to just hear their ideas about how they felt about it. And I think most people on my bus had probably never marched before. for anything. So that was super fun to.
So-
I have a feeling Samita and Autumn probably had both marched before in their lives, but I think a lot of people on our bus had not. Everybody just seemed so invigorated. They were, of course, also exhausted because, remember, I had stayed in a hotel room the night before. They had been on a bus the night before. So they rode a bus all night long, marched, got back on the bus, and went home. So they did a lot of sleeping. We slept a lot on the bus, but it was still fun. I just wanted to have that bit of camaraderie, even though I knew we'd all be sleepy at night.
So, were there any other signs that anybody had that you remember? Or that
I
stuck
wish
out?
I could remember them because there were so many signs. Oh my gosh. You know, of course, the whole Savannah contingent had the Panhandle Slim signs, which, literally strangers would just come up to you. One of the marchers Facebooked quite a lot about it. I can't think of it now, who it was, but she was just amazed by how many people in Washington were stopping them and talking about the signs, and so he really contributed a lot to the Savannah contingent by doing this for us. But other signs, some of them were just so provocative, it was actually shocking to me. And I'm not easily shocked. And then others were just hilarious. Maybe the one that stands out the most to me that I liked the best was when I saw Pussy Grabs Back. I thought that was very funny.
Do you remember any of the chants?
No, not really. I mean, I guess I do, because I remember telling people later that, you know how I keep referring to how everybody seemed angry, and I wasn't quite expecting that for some bizarre reason. I guess I was expecting more happy solidarity, but it's certainly understandable why we're angry, because I'm angry too. And there was a portion of a street I was marching on where for more than 15 minutes probably they were saying, hey, hey, ho, ho, Donald Trump has got to go. And I actually was not expecting that, because that was the day after he was inaugurated.
All right. Let's see. Did you have any interaction with, say, law enforcement, any counter demonstrations, anything?
No, I did not. In 2004, we were actually trained. That march was just really incredibly, every detail of that march was put together. So I had remembered my training from 2004. But come to think of it, I think Coco, Pappy, actually did send us instructions. That I had learned also in 2004. So yes, we were trained for this one too. And basically it was just training us, do not react, do not engage, just keep marching. You're in your lane, stay in your own lane. And but I actually didn't notice any counter protesters.
What do you think about the media coverage of the event?
I thought it was fine, I guess. I mean, since I've worked with the media as part of my living, I think they did fine. I mean, that was a lot to handle in one weekend. Just the day before the president had been inaugurated, there was a lot going on. I actually had friends send me the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times, and so they covered it. I think it did fine. I wasn't here to hear Savannah coverage, so I don't know if Savannah covered it very well. I would hope they did, but I'm not aware of that.
So where were you getting your information from about the march? At that
Facebook.
Let's see. Well, did you get emotional at any time?
Oh, I'm sure I did. Yeah, I don't really remember it. But I could burst into tears right now. Again, it's appalling to me that in the 21st century where we are.
So, in the time, the day after the march till now, what are your feelings about the march? Its successes, its failings?
I feel very, very pleased that I participated. I am proud of the hundreds of thousands of other people who came. So, even though it almost feels like too little too late, at least it's happening, you know? At least people finally stood up and said, this cannot be. And of course now it is. The election's over, and it is. And he did win. Russia or no Russia, the guy won, you know? And if people sadly are now going to understand that elections have consequences, he is going to have the opportunity to change the Supreme Court that literally is going to stand for decades. It may stand for the next 40 years, what this president does. And, so thank heavens we're aware of that now. And of course, just a number of weeks, maybe it was 8 or 10 weeks later, a lot of us surrounded our Planned Parenthood building here in Savannah to help them against a protest that anti-choice people were putting on around America, and Savannah was one of the cities. So that's nice too. I think Savannah is participating in part of this global awakening of women and men. This isn't just women, this is men understanding that women's rights are indeed human rights.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the event in Savannah that you participated in?
March? I don't remember it so well, but again, our beloved Coco got us all together. And apparently it was discovered that anti-choice factions had an underground action planned for a certain Saturday that was going to occur in various cities across America. And our folks found out about it, and they found out that Savannah was one of the cities. And so very quietly we were told exactly how not to carry the message to our friends and supporters. And so by the time the anti-choice people showed up to the Planned Parenthood building, we already had more than 100 Savannians surrounding our Planned Parenthood building in support of Planned Parenthood. And they weren't expecting us, so we beat them to their own punch. And Coco had us, or I don't know if it was Coco, but various organizers to counteract that day nationwide. We were told to use hearts and positive statements, and so I made a poster that just said, "I love Planned Parenthood," hearts.
So was there any conversation between the two groups?
No, we were standing pretty close to each other, and the television stations came out and gave equal time to both sides, and it made the news. But it was heartening to see that the pro-choice women's rights supporting side had easily 3 times, if not 4 times, as many people as the anti-choice factions.
In the time after the march till now, have you, besides this event, participated in any other events, or how do you keep the spirit going?
Yeah, well, it has gotten me kind of re-energized to interact more with the Planned Parenthood organization, specifically that organization. So that's good. I'm not as hands-on with it as I was when I was younger. But I'm also a very strong believer that you know, I'm pushing 60 years old. The women and men in their 20s and 30s need to stand up. It's their turn, and they need to take action. And you know, I'm a little irritated that I feel like we are where we are before they decided to take action. It would have been nice if they had done that a year ago. But you know, hopefully they will. You know, it'll be interesting to see how the future leaders handle what is going to be massive change because of this president's ability to probably choose many Supreme Court justices. And you know, it'll just be it'll be interesting to see if this generation, this up and coming generation, pushes for the Supreme Court to have term limits, which I don't think is a bad idea. And certainly, this country needs to come together, whether you're Republican or Democrat or Independent, and make term limits on this on our Congress. And I can sit with a Tea Party Republican, who you notice they all call themselves patriots, as though the rest of us are not. And by the end of the conversation, we will be in complete agreement that term limits are what we both need to push for. So I think that's interesting.
Are there anything that you would suggest for people to do, and how to cope with these changes, and just things?
Well, you'll feel better if you do something. You know, I mean, I understand that a lot of people, especially since the 2008 financial collapse, a lot of people in America are working 2 and 3 jobs, you know, so you can't necessarily have the luxury of time to give a lot of time. But I promise, if you just do one little thing, or just one thing every 8 weeks, or even if you have, you know, just $10, if that Bernie Sanders campaign didn't teach us anything, it taught us the value of $10 or $27 or whatever it was that was his average donation. You know, but every little penny counts, every 10 minutes of your time counts, and it'll make you feel better. And the other most important thing is we have got to stop being willfully ignorant as a country, where all of a sudden people who truly believe in democratic values are absolutely shocked that we are losing them. I mean, all you had to do was engage with the news, and you would have seen that happening.
That is about all the questions I have. Is there anything that you think I've missed, or any events or people that
I think the only thing that I would say, which is, this is say, you know, do as I say, not as I do, is because we are where we are as a country, I really do hope that young women will consider standing for office. We have got to get more women into our decision-making roles in this country. And I never even considered doing that. So I am, you know, do as I say, not as I do. But I really think that is beginning to become critical. I mean, we are back to where we were, where it is a room full of old white men telling us what we can do with our bodies, what we can do with our money. Well, it is so shameful. And the only way that we're going to be able to counteract that is to understand that we are actually more than half of the population. I believe 51% of the population is female. and we need to grab that power. And the only way we're going to do that is for young women to start serving, to go for public service with all the heartache and headache that that entails.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And